Hello, I'm doing a movie review and I gotta take a piss. Hello, I'm doing a movie review and the movie I want to review is Creepshow III. I dropped it. Hello, I'm doing a movie review and the movie I want to review is the 2006 straight-to-DVD horror-comedy anthology film, Creepshow III. I dropped it again. Now, recently me and my friend Jeremy reviewed the original Creepshow along with its 1987 sequel. Then we reviewed Tales from the Dark Side the movie, which is considered by a lot of people, myself included, to be the real Creepshow 3. But in 2006, there was a movie called Creepshow 3, and I figured, yeah, I kinda have to review it, so what do I think of Creepshow 3? Oh boy. Do you really want to know what I think of this movie? Are you sure you want to know what I think of this movie? Do you really want to know what I think of this movie? Are you sure you want to know what I think of this movie? Fuck this movie. Well, that takes care of that. Yeah, I know, I should probably be a little more in-depth. Now, Creepshow 3 was directed by Anna Clavell and James Dudelson. Now, for all I know, they might be very nice people in real life. I don't know much about them, and maybe they've done good movies outside of this, but dear God, I hope they never see this review, because I'm pretty sure they're gonna hate my guts after they hear what I have to say about their movie. Now, prior to this, they also directed Day of the Dead 2, Contagium, which was an in-name only sequel to George Romero's Day of the Dead, but as far as I'm concerned, there's only one sequel to Day of the Dead, and that's Land of the Dead. Now, I actually have Day of the Dead 2, Contagium on DVD. I got it for Christmas when I was 12 years old. Keep in mind, we're going back almost 15 years now, but I remember I started watching it one night, and I fell asleep halfway through it, and I've never watched it again. So that might give you an idea of how much of an impression that movie made on me. But Creepshow 3... dear God, this might be one of the worst fucking movies I ever had to sit through. Now, there are so many movies out there, like Troll 2 or Batman and Robin, that are considered to be the worst movies of all time. No. Those movies are freaking Citizen Kane compared to this movie. Like, this is the movie that should be shown in interrogations to get the suspect to talk. And if there's a hell, I'm pretty sure Satan probably plays this movie on repeat to torture the sinners for all eternity. And it's a movie that will honestly make you ponder why suicide is illegal. Now, Creepshow 3 is 5 stories in one, but all the stories are in the same continuity, so you get reoccurring characters or references to what happened in the other story. I guess they were trying to go for, like, the Pulp Fiction route, but Pulp Fiction, this movie most certainly is not. So, the first story in the movie is called Alice, and it's about this girl whose name is Alice, and she's, for want of a better term, a bratty, stuck-up bitch. But she comes home one day to find her father messing around with this remote that he got from his strange professor who lives on their block, named Dayton, and he presses a button on the remote, and all of a sudden her family turns African American. He presses the button again, and they turn Hispanic. Basically, this remote control can literally change reality, but as Alice is shifting in and out of these different realities, she's starting to mutate, and I'm spoiling the shit out of this. She ends up mutating into this horrible... she almost looks like a walking human tumor. But then at the end of the story, Dayton turns her into a rabbit for some fucking reason. I think what they were trying to go for, and maybe I'm giving this way more credit than it actually deserves, I think they were going for the idea that she was a rabbit originally, but Dayton fucked up and accidentally created an alternate reality where this rabbit is a teenage girl and it ends where he changes her back. But if that's the case, how come before she becomes a rabbit, she mutates into this horrible, ugly-looking thing? Like, it honestly comes off like they're just being gross for the sake of being gross. Now, I'm certainly not against gross-out horror. I mean, one of my top 5 favorite movies of all time is Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. But there's ways to do it right, and there's ways to do it wrong. Now, one of my biggest issues with this segment is it's so mean-spirited. And what I mean by that is Alice is certainly not a likable character, but she definitely doesn't deserve that to happen to her. And it's not like the earlier Creepshow movies where you had segments about bad things happening to bad people. In this, it's like, what the fuck did Alice do to deserve this to happen to her other than being a bit of a brat? And yes, you could argue that Jordy Verrill from the first Creepshow movie or the kids from The Raft in Creepshow II didn't deserve what happened to them. But at least in, like, the Jordy Verrill segment, they presented Jordy Verrill as somebody that you're supposed to feel sorry for. The issue with this segment from this movie is they don't present Alice as somebody that you're really supposed to feel sorry for. Yet at the same time, she didn't really do anything to deserve this, so it's like, what the fuck was even the point of this? Like, it feels like it's just there to torture the audience as much as the main character. And yes, I'm aware her turning into a rabbit is an obvious nod to Alice in Wonderland. Now, what the second segment in the movie is called The Radio, and to its credit, it is better than the first segment, but it's just really fucking boring. It really is, and it's way longer than it needs to be. I've also seen this premise done a lot better in other things. It actually reminded me a little bit of an X-Files episode about a guy who got a tattoo of a woman, and the tattoo starts talking to him, but that X-Files episode did it a lot better. Of course, this doesn't deal with the tattoo, it deals with a radio, but it does have sort of the same premise. Basically, it's about this down-on-his-luck security guard who's a major alcoholic and likes arrogant bastard ale. But one day he purchases a radio from this homeless man, and the radio starts talking to him in a female voice, and it starts giving him, like, financial advice, then it starts telling him where he can find stolen money, but then it starts telling him to kill people. But the biggest issue with this segment is it's just boring. I will say this, the actor playing Jerry, the main character, A.J. Bowen, he's actually pretty good in this movie, and he did go on to be in other things, and he's actually one of the better actors in this movie. The third segment of the movie is called Call Girl, and I'm gonna say this, for all the venom I've been spewing at this movie, I'm gonna say it, this segment is actually kind of tolerable. It's not very well made, and it's not very well written or well acted, but the premise is there. Basically, it's about this female serial killer named Rachel who poses as a prostitute in order to get male victims. But, spoiler, her most recent client turns out to be a vampire. Again, not great, but this segment definitely has potential, and I could see this working in a better anthology film. This segment does have a cameo from Eileen Dietz, who I actually met several years ago. For those of you who don't know, she's the one who played the demon's face in The Exorcist. Unfortunately, one fairly decent segment is not enough to save this fucking movie, because it gets way, way worse after that. The fourth segment in the movie is called The Professor's Wife, and it follows the character of Professor Dayton from the first story, who is getting married. So these two former students of his come over to his house, who were supposedly his smartest students. If you actually watch the segment, you'll be like, yeah, bullshit. And they meet the professor's fiancé and notice that there's something a little off about her, and she doesn't seem to remember how she met the professor. And these two bozos immediately come to the conclusion that she's a robot. So they decide to disassemble her, and wouldn't you know it? It turns out she wasn't a goddamn robot. She was a human being that these two assholes just mercilessly murdered. Obviously, the segment's not even remotely meant to be taken seriously, but It's dumb. It's really, really fucking dumb. The fifth and final segment of the movie is called Haunted Dog, and it's about this asshole doctor who buys a hot dog but drops it on the ground, so he ends up giving it to a homeless man, and the homeless man ends up choking and dying from the hot dog. So the homeless guy's ghost starts haunting this doctor. And yes, it's just as stupid as it sounds. I think they were trying to kind of make this like the Hitchhiker segment from Creepshow II, because it ends where the ghost says thanks for the dog, but yeah, no, it's pretty freaking bad. But yeah, Creepshow 3 is abysmal. It's a terrible, terrible freaking movie. Now, if you happen to like this movie, I guess more power to you, and I'm not bashing you for your opinion, but yeah, obviously you see something in this movie that I don't. I don't recommend the movie, so watch it at your own risk, but be warned that after watching this, you might experience 5 hours of ass-burning diarrhea. But my next movie review will actually be on a good movie, and that is the 1991 Stephen King adaptation, Sometimes They Come Back.